So here we are, we're at Farming Smarter, one of our Saving Soils projects. This is our inter-row cover crops with sugar beets trial. So if you have been following along, this is the second year we've done this trial. And we did make some adjustments this year based on the results we had last year. So last year we seeded crops in between the rows of the sugar beets pretty much as late as possible, right after the last herbicide application. And we used a variety of crops, and we found last year a couple of things kind of stuck out. One, some of the crops we used just weren't effective at all. We've dropped them from the protocol. And the other thing we found was it was really challenging to get much established on these cover crops. And we thought maybe if we planted some a little bit earlier, we'd have a little bit more success. So this year we've got fewer crops. We've got winter wheat, winter lentils, Sudangrass, spring barley, and fall rye, so just 5 crops, but we've planted them both at 2 timings. So one was the same timing as last year, as late as possible after that final herbicide application, so that 3rd herbicide application, so it's pretty close to canopy closure. But then we did a second, an earlier seeding date that was about 7 to 10 days sooner, and we thought, you know, maybe that gives the crop just a little more time to get established and grow before that canopy closure. And you know, if everything works out nice, there's at least some crop there to kind of hold things together. The one risk with that approach is that we're bypassing that final herbicide application because we're seeding a little sooner. The seedlings are coming up for that final herbicide application. And you can see the effects of that a little bit. We've got some wild oats, particularly one plot there, but you can see there's more weeds where we missed that last herbicide application, so definitely a risk there to be considered. And as far as plant growth, you know, we're not really seeing a lot either way. So even that 7 to 10 days earlier, for the most part, and we'll get some measurable biomass kind of when we get closer to the end of the season, but for the most part, you know, even going early, that 7 to 10 days early, we're still not getting a whole lot of plant growth under the canopy here. So here's our early fall rye. Let's see if we can separate the canopy out a little bit. So even with an extra 7 to 10 days of growth, you know, you can see the plants, they are here at this point in the season with this much foliage. You know, they're really getting choked out. I don't know how much they're really going to do to hold the soil together at this point. So yeah, it's looking like it's a, you know, kind of a real challenge to get, you know, cover crops established, you know, so that they're there to hold the soil after harvest. We also do have, one of our treatments is the Sudangrass, and one of the things about Sudangrass is it's more of a late season, like very quick growing plant. It can really, you know, it kind of likes the warm weather. So this is our late seeded Sudangrass, and we've got a little spot here where there's less canopy closure, but you know, there is some there. You know, so it's yeah, some here too. Some of them's kind of tall, so it is present. You know, not a lot of it. It's not out competing the sugar beets, which is what you want, but still maybe not competitive enough to make a big difference. If we look on the horizon a little bit, you know, all those little patches where the sugar beets, you know, where they're not growing as well, that Sudangrass does really come in. You certainly don't want to see that much, but yeah, so we're going to keep an eye on this for the next month or so. It's early September now. I happened to drive by the sugar factory this morning, and I saw some of the real early digs are happening, so they've got a few beets moving. This probably won't come off for another month yet, into October, and so at that point we'll collect some biomass. We'll get some. Once we get to harvest, we'll actually measure the growth of these cover crops, see how much survived, how much is there root matter in the soil, and then once we harvest the sugar beets, we'll see what's left there as well. And then we'll also be collecting a little bit of information on the sugar beets themselves. So, you know, is there a yield effect? Are we hurting the sugar beets in terms of yield or sugar production by having these cover crops in there? So yeah, for anybody interested, I'm happy to chat about the project and what we found so far. So feel free to give me a call, and stay tuned to Farming Smarter for updates once we get to harvest. We will follow up in the spring. You know, so once everything's harvested, we'll pull out the sugar beets, and then the cover crops will be between the dug rows. So they'll still be intact throughout the winter. So we're going to monitor them and keep an eye on them. And you know, depending on the kind of fall we have, we may get some growth post-harvest from some of the fall rye or winter wheats, or a little bit of growth in the winter. And one thing that we thought maybe we'd add this year after last year is to do just a light harrow over everything, because we found that all the you know, the defoliated beet tops and all the soil ended up piling on top of our cover crops, and it gave it really no opportunity to actually continue growth. Because last year, you know, of all years last year, you know, where it probably didn't freeze until December, you know, was a great opportunity to get something established. So if we have a similar year with a little bit of harrowing, we might have a little bit more success on that front. So.